guys are just gonna love creating this sweet, cozy little hat. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Stitch Sessions. Karen here, and I have a sweet and cozy project for you guys this week. It is the Cozy Carmen hat, and it is a very simple design. Now, actually, this little flower here, this was added on afterwards. So the hat design itself simply is this right here. It's a 3-row repeat, super easy once you get a hang of this stitch right here, which is the mixed cluster stitch. Now, we did this in a tutorial about 2 weeks back, and I showed it to you in a swatch. This project is going to be using this stitch in the round, and it creates this really just lovely, cushy, and cozy design. And I alternated it with a contrasting color and very simple stitches, just the single crochet. And then at the end, I came across a whole slew of these crochet flowers that I had done, I think, last year sometime. It might have even been the year before, actually, when we were working on some spring flowers. And I thought, well, this is going to look absolutely adorable on this little hat. So I sewed this on, and of course, I will leave a link to this in the description box down below. It was kind of a last minute add-on at the end. So if you want to add this flower on, there is a separate tutorial on that, just so you know. But this should not take you very long to whip up. It's just working in the round. We created a tube and then we cinched it at the top. So it's a nice, I would say a beginner-friendly design. Again, with the mixed cluster stitch, you might have to just pack your patience a little bit if you're a little newer, but it's nothing that you can't do. And now if you want to too, you can add a pom-pom at the top. I did not, just because I wanted to keep it nice and simple. And then when I added on the flower, I just thought that it might be a little too much, which I'll show you guys later on in the tutorial. So what do you say? Are you guys ready to stitch up this really sweet, cozy hat? Let's do it. Now, I will show you, or I will talk you through how you can make this for any size, by the way. So this is for a toddler. So my niece is just over 2 years old, so I made this for her. But when I talk to you guys about what you'll need in terms of materials, I'll talk about how you can opt to size this up, whether it's for a teenager or even an adult. So you can make this hat for absolutely any size. So what do you say? Let's get to it. Okay, so for this project, you're going to want to print out, or at least reference, my crochet hat sizing chart. And you can find this on the crochetcrafty.com website. And of course, there will be a link to this in the description box down below. But this helps you to figure out how to size your hat. Now, I'm going to be making mine for a 2-year-old, so it's a toddler. So I'm going to do it between 2 and 3. And basically the measurement you're going to need for this particular project is your head circumference and your hat depth. So if I find my age range, so I'm doing it for toddler 2 to 3. So I know that my head circumference is going to be between 18 and 19 inches. And it also does state it in metric for those of you that go by metric. So that would be between 46 and 48.5 centimeters. So you'll want to take a note of whatever size you're making it for, write it down, and then go along here to your hat height or depth. And I know for me that my depth needs to be at least 7¼ to 7½ inches or 19 centimeters. Now, if you want to make this like a super slouchy beanie, of course you can make your hat depth longer. So this sizing chart, a very handy tool. You're going to need that to size this hat for whichever size you are making it for. And then, of course, make sure that you have a measuring tape so that you can measure the length, or at least measure the person that you are making it for. If you don't have the person on hand, or if you're making it for a surprise gift, this should help you out fine and dandy. Just make sure that when we begin, that we do that starting chain to the length that the circumference indicates. And I'll go through that in the tutorial today. So make sure these two handy tools are on hand. Of course, we have our yarn. And for this project, I'm gonna be using 2 different colors here. I have Bernat Premium yarn here. It's a medium 4-weight yarn. And in case you're wondering about the color, It is called Baby Lilac. Now I'm just trying to use what I've got left in my stash. So I've got some of this. And for the white color you see here, I'm using loops and threads. And this is the Snuggly Wuggly acrylic yarn. Now, it is not a medium 4-weight yarn, and I always say make sure you match up your yarn weights. It is a lightweight number 3, but what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be pulling from the inside and the outside, and I'm going to be doubling these two together. And this should give me a fair comparable to this medium 4-weight here. So if I just take these two here, just like that. So this will become a little bit more comparable. Now you could say, well, why don't you just go out and buy, you know, some white yarn in the Bernat Premium? You're absolutely right. I could have done that. But the thing is, I'm really trying to work through my stash before I buy more yarn unnecessarily. I've had some balls and skeins of yarn lying around. I just really want to work through them. So I like to be efficient with my stash, so that's why I'm going to be using this. But if you are buying yours fresh, definitely buy them both from the same yarn weight, okay? And I will not be using all of these for the hat. So this comes in 198 gram ball, and this comes in, I know sometimes you guys ask me about amounts, 141 grams. I will not go through these two for the hat. So you'll definitely have lots left over. The hook size I'm going to be using is going to be a 5.5 millimeter hook, which is also known as an I or a size 9 if you go by those labels. And then as always, make sure that you have a pair of scissors on hand and a yarn needle to weave in our ends at the end. So once you've got all the materials gathered together, we're going to get started stitching up our hat. Okay, so we're going to begin by placing a slip knot on our hook here. And for the stitch we're going to be using, which is the mixed cluster stitch, we want to chain up in multiples of 2 and then add 1 at the end. Now you saw me recently do a stitch tutorial using this stitch, but I did it in a flat surface just to create a little swatch. Today's project is going to be done in the round. So we're going to be chaining up multiples of 2 plus 1. In the flat project, you might remember that we did multiples of 2 plus 1. And then once you had your length, we added yet another one on top. We're not going to add that final one. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to chain up in multiples of 2 until I get my circumference. And like I said, my circumference is 18 inches. But what I like to do is I like to always take away an inch so that the hat will sit a little bit nice and snug. The project will stretch over time, so it's better to make it a little bit more snug. So I usually take away 1 inch. Sometimes I'll even take out 2 inches. So totally up to you. So I'm going to start off with my chain here in multiples of 2. Okay, so I've chained up a total of 60, and now I'm going to add 1 more. So I have 61 chains in total. I have something that looks like this. And now what I want to do is I just want to make sure it's nice and straight here. It's not twisted. I'm going to go back to the very first chain, and I'm going to insert my hook to slip stitch to join it into a ring. And from here on out, we're going to be working in the round. So we've got something that looks like that. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we are going to chain 1. So this is going to be round number 1. We're going to chain 1, and then we're going to place a single crochet right back into the same stitch where we slip stitch. But I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to work into the back bumps. So the front here are the V's, and these are the bumps in the back. And this is the part where we're going to cinch it at the top, and it'll make a lot more sense later on. So I want to just create a nice little even edging. So that's why I'm doing this. So I'm going to turn my work over and right into that very first bump right there. Just going to help that along. I'm going to single crochet. And that is all I'm going to do for round number 1. Into every single bump, I'm going to place a single crochet stitch. Now, if you're a little newer, you might find this a bit finicky. do not worry. I would just recommend you go right into the front of the stitch as usual. So just insert as usual and single crochet, not the end of the world. I am just doing this for an added little finesse, okay? So into every single stitch, one single crochet all the way around. Okay, so I've come up to the end of my round here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the top of the very first single crochet. So this is that chain 1, so we're going to ignore that, and we are going to slip stitch to join our round, just like that. So now you can see our ring is fully formed here. So I now have 61 stitches in total. So we're going to move on now to round number 2, and round number 2 is going to be a repeat of round number 1, except now you've got stitches to work into, so it should be nice and easy. So for round number 2, you will chain 1, and then you will go into the very next stitch and single crochet. So we're essentially just doing the same thing we did in round number 1, just nice and easy. You're going to insert and single crochet. Now you'll notice that after I chained 1, I went right into the next stitch. I did not go into the same stitch. I alternate this depending on the round. That way it hides the seam. So I don't always single crochet into the very first stitch. I do that every other round. So when I come back to the end, I will ignore this chain 1 and I will single crochet back into that same stitch. If you're unsure, just make sure that you have 61 stitches at the end of the round. And if you only have 60, then you know you need to put one more. And if you've got your 61, then you know you've got enough stitches and you can slip stitch to join. Okay, so I'm at the end of round number 2, and this is where, see, this is where that chain 1 came out of. Normally we would skip that if we worked it, but we are going to ignore it and we're going to work into that stitch, single crochet, and then we are going to slip stitch into that next stitch to join. Now, if you find that confusing at all, just remember, go back, count your stitches, and if you're missing one, just add one in that spot, and if you're not, then you're just going to slip stitch to join. So, whoops. So your ring now looks like this. So it's gaining a little bit of width here. And this is the point now where I'm going to introduce our white color. So we've done 2 rows of single crochets. And actually what I'm going to do, because we are going to carry our yarn for this project, I'm going to take that loop out and I'm going to insert my hook. And instead of pulling through with the purple, I'm going to pull through with the white. Now, I did this technique in last week's video for that mini sweater ornament. So if you watch that video, you will be familiar with this technique. Now, remember, I am holding 2 strands together. So I'm going to pull that through. If you have a medium 4-weight white yarn, then you will not be using 2 strands together. You're just going to be having a regular strand. So I'm going to chain 1 now that I've pulled through, and this gives us a nice smooth color transition. I'm just going to pull on that purple a little bit. Okay, so this is round number 3, and now is where we're going to start working on that mixed cluster stitch. Just going to leave that purple there. I'm going to ignore it for a little bit. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to chain a second chain, and that is going to count as a half double crochet. Okay. Then I'm going to go right back into the same stitch and I'm going to begin a double crochet stitch. I'm going to try and work over these 2 white tails here. Okay, so I pull through and then I yarn over and pull through 2, just like I would with a regular double crochet, but I'm not going to resolve it. I'm going to leave it on the hook as is. Then I'm going to yarn over and I'm going to go back into that same stitch. And I'm going to pull up a loop, yarn over, I'm going to pull through the first 2 only. So I have basically 2 double crochets that are unresolved, okay? And I currently have 3 loops on the hook, okay? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip the next stitch, and into the following stitch, I'm going to insert my hook to pull up a loop. Then I'm going to yarn over, and notice I pull up that loop. I stretch it up to the height of the other stitches. I yarn over, and then I go back in a second time to pull up another loop. Okay, now I'm holding 2 strands together, so it might be a little funky, but I have 3, 4, 5, 6 strands on my hook. Okay, once you have 6 strands, you're going to yarn over, pull through all 6, and then you're going to chain 1. And that is your mixed cluster stitch. I know it doesn't really look like much just yet because it's the first one, but that is how you're going to work this stitch for this round. Okay, so now what we're going to do to go on to the next one is you're going to do that little mini cluster of double crochet stitches, but you're going to insert where you just completed the previous stitch. So we're going to yarn over, insert our hook, pull up and pull through 2. Then we yarn over and go back into that same stitch, yarn over and pull through 2. So again, we've got 2 double crochets that are unresolved, and that is the initial loop on our hook. Then we skip a stitch, go into the following stitch and do that little mini puff. So we pull up the loop to the height here, yarn over and insert to pull up another loop. Really important, don't yarn over before you go into this stitch, okay? This gives us our 6 loops on the hook. Yarn over and pull through all 6, and then chain 1. And there's your next cluster stitch. I love how it creates such a beautiful puffy stitch. So this is what you're going to do for the rest of this round. So I'm going to do it one more time with you. I'm going to yarn over, go back into the previously worked stitch, start a double crochet but do not resolve. Then I do it again. Double crochet but do not resolve. Then I skip the next stitch and into the following. Whoops, do not yarn over. You're going to insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, insert again, pull up a loop, and 6 loops all together. So remember, I'm holding 2 strands together. That's why they're done in sets of 2 there. Yarn over, pull through all 6, and then you chain 1. Okay? Look at how nice and cushy that is. So here it is from the other side, and that is going to look super cute. Okay, so you're going to do that all the way to the end of round number 3. Okay, so I'm just coming up to my last mixed cluster stitch here. So I've just done the 2 double crochets unresolved. I have a stitch here I'm going to skip, and then I'm going into the very last stitch. So I'm going to pull that up for my mini puff. And then I pull through all of these. And then I'm going to chain 1. Okay, now when we worked on this in the flat project, we did not chain 1 at the very end, but we are going to for this project here, okay? And so then what we're going to do after we chain 1, we're just going to slip stitch into the top of that chain 2, if you can find it, right there. And you're going to slip stitch to join your round, just like that. And round number 3 is complete. You can see how cute that already looks. Okay, so now we are just going to do a nice, easy repeat of rounds 1 through 3 for the rest of this project. So what we're going to do next, and again, I already slip stitched, I'm going to pull that out. And when we're ready to bring back our opposite color back in, so I'm going to slip stitch to the top of the chain 2 right there. But instead of bringing through my white, I'm going to drop the white, and now I'm going to bring up the purple. Okay? And I bring that through and slip stitch through just like that. Okay, so you're going to see a little bit of the yarn being carried up on the inside, and that's okay. Nobody's going to be looking at that anyway. So now you would chain 1, and I'm just going to pull on this white yarn a little bit to help it out. And right back into that same stitch where we slip stitched, I'm going to single crochet. So this round is going to be a repeat of round number 1 and number 2. So now we have, you can see the stitches here. We're just going to go into each and every single stitch, and we are going to single crochet. And we're going to do this for round number 4 and round number 5. And you're just going to have to find the stitches a little bit here. Okay, so our mixed cluster stitch will be kind of enclosed with single crochets above and underneath. And that is it. That is the repeat for this project. You're going to do 2 rounds of single crochets and 1 round of mixed cluster stitches, okay? And what you're going to do is you're going to keep doing that until you get to your hat height. So for me, if I go to my chart here, my hat height is about 7 1/4. I'm going to do probably closer to 7 1/2. Now this is for a hat that will fit, you know, somewhat snugly around the head. Sometimes I give a little bit of extra height. In this case, we're going to cinch the top. So I am probably going to do maybe 7 3/4. Even if I go up to 8 inches, I think that will be good because it's always good to have a little bit of extra room. So because our hat, we're going to gather it at the top, we're going to lose some height anyway. So keep that in mind when you're working on your specific hat designs. In this case, we are working a tube and then we're going to cinch the top. So you will lose some height there. So you know what? I'm going to go right up to 8 inches for sure. Okay, so keep that in mind when you're working up your height. It doesn't matter if you're doing it for a child or an adult. This hat design, you want to account for a little bit of a loss of height at the top. So that is what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave you to create your height, and then I'll be back to show you what we're going to do next. Okay, so I have reached my 8 inches in depth. So I have something that looks like a little tube here. And what I'm going to do now is just put on a brim. So basically we started from the top and worked our way down to the brim. And the reason why I like doing that, some people might just cinch it in here since you've got the long tail, but I find that sometimes with the starting chain, now this one's pretty decent, sometimes with the starting chain, it can restrict the stretch. So I always like to come back, if I'm going to cinch, I always cinch the side that had the starting chain, and then this one has a little bit more of the stretch. Although I have to say, I did a pretty decent job of keeping my chains relaxed, but I can still feel there's a little bit of tension there. So that is why now we're going to work on a really simple brim. I know some people like to do post stitches, or they like to do single crochets with the back loops only going this way. A lot of times especially for children's hats, I like to keep it super simple and just do a few more rounds of single crochets. So I've repeated a total of 8 repeats of our pattern, and I ended with 2 rows of the single crochets to match here. And now what I'd like to do is I'm probably going to add either another 2 to 4 rows to create a brim. And I'm just going to use a nice and easy basic single crochet stitch. And actually I can snip off my white yarn here, and just so you guys can see there's still a ton left over of these 2 skeins, so you can definitely make several of these hats if you so wish. Okay, so I'm just going to cut my white yarn because I am finished with it. Then I'll weave in that end. Okay. And now what I'm going to do, or maybe I can even work over this tail. Let's see here. So I just slip stitched to join, and I'm just simply going to continue doing a few more rounds of single crochet. So I'm going to chain 1, and then I'm going to go into the next stitch. Let me see if I can work over that tail. And single crochet. Nice and straightforward. So you might do an additional 2 rounds, you might do an additional 4. So I will let you know how many I end up doing in just a moment. Okay, so I have finished my brim and I ended up doing an additional 3 rounds. So I have a total of 5 rounds of single crochets at the end. So I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm just going to snip my yarn here and fasten off. And then I'm going to weave this in afterwards. So what I want to show you guys right now is how we're going to kind of cinch up the end of our hat. So this is going to be the brim. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it inside out, because we're going to do that from the inside. And then you want to grab another piece of yarn, like I would say about 12 to 18 inches. I mean, it's probably more than enough, but I always like to give myself quite a bit. And then I'm going to thread my yarn needle, and I'm going to show you guys how I'm going to cinch in the top of my hat. So we know that the side that has the thicker band of purple here is the brim, so we're not working on that side. We're going to work from this side. So what I like to do is just fold it or set it down here so that it's nicely here. Then I'm going to take these two edges and I'm going to bring them together. So we know those are the center. And then with this yarn needle, I'm going to bring my yarn through and I'm going to tie a knot there. So that way I know where the center is of the top of my hat. Okay, and I'm just going to knot it a couple of times. Okay, and now I'm going to take this side here and fold it in, kind of like it's in half. And then I'm going to just insert my needle through a stitch there and pull that through. And then I'm going to insert it again just to solidify that position and pull it through. So I've got something funny that looks like that. Then I go to the other side and I do the same idea. So just, you know, eyeball it so it looks relatively even. And then I'm also going to go through the stitch there. So that's where my starting chain was. Whoops. And then if you want, you can tie it with this loop here, or this tail I should say, but I'm going to go through one more time through the center and then through that loop again. And now it's really secure there. So you've got something that looks like that. And now if you want with that tail, you can make a little knot there, just like that. So it's pretty straightforward. Some people like to weave it in and out of all the stitches and then cinch it shut. And depending on the yarn, I do that too, but this feels like it's going to be a little bit thicker somewhat. So this is the method I decided to use here. And then what I'm going to do is through each little end here, I'm going to kind of line up to the center of that and then insert through there and then cinch that shut. So see how it snips it in a little bit closer. And every time I do that, I'm going to come back in the center and then do another run around through there. Okay. And then I go to the next big loop that we've got here. I call this a little loop. And then I'm going to find, so where the crease is there, that automatically tells you that's our center. So I'm going to insert and then cinch that through. So it also now becomes bunched in. And for me, I find this method just gives you a nice, even looking, cinched in center. Okay, so you can see how it's gathering up nicely. So I'm going to continue doing that. I'm going to do it on this side. I'm going to do it on this side. Sometimes, depending, I might even do it again and cinch this down further. Or I might just kind of sew these up so that they're closed off. So it all depends once I turn it, like if I turn it in right side out so far, you can see that that's actually coming out pretty decent. I'm going to have to weave that tail in. So I might not cinch it in anymore just because it gets a bit bulky. So that's what it's going to look like. So I'm going to continue doing that. And then once I've cinched up the top, the hat is pretty much done. Okay, so I've finished cinching up my top, and now the last thing to do is turn it right side out. And there is the top there. Now, of course, if you want to, you can add a nice big fluffy pom, but I am just going to leave this nice and simple. So Our Cozy Carmen hat is complete. Is that not adorable? Now, the hat is done, so you can leave it as is if you like, but I actually came across this little crochet flower from a while back. We did a tutorial on this, and if you're curious about it, I'll leave a link for that in the description box down below. And I just thought this would just be the added perfect touch to this, and I left a nice long tail so I can sew that in. So I think for my hat, I am going to add that in. I think it's just going to be a nice, really adorable, cute little thing. And all the more reason why I'm not going to add a pom. I think if I added a pom-pom and the flower, it might be a bit too much. So I think this little sweet flower is going to be the perfect add-on. And once I've sewn it in, I'll put a graphic up here as well, just to show you guys what it looks like. But our hat is technically complete. So I hope you guys found that really nice and easy to do. And I hope that this took a little bit of the kind of the mystery, I'll call it, out of that mixed cluster stitch. So like I said, a couple weeks ago, we did it in a flat swatch, but this is also a great lesson on how you can use that same stitch working in the round. And look at what a pretty nice little cushy texture it creates here. And it just looks absolutely lovely in our hat project. And there is the top. And I cannot wait to gift this to the recipient. And once I put the flower on, it's going to be good to go. Now, let me know in the comments down below if you have any detailed questions. I'm very happy to help. And I know a lot of you do like to email me directly, so please do feel free. Email me at info@crochetcrafty.com. And again, if you were interested in how to create this flower as well, there already is an existing tutorial, and I'll leave a link for it in the description box down below. Now, come and say hi to me. I'm on both Facebook and Instagram at The Stitch Sessions. And make sure to tag me in your projects, because I always love to see what colors you guys have chosen to create these designs. So next week, we are going to be introducing our November project in our Home Sweet Home series. So you're definitely going to want to come back for that. And if you're new here and you enjoyed today's tutorial, I invite you to come and hang out with me every Wednesday morning. Make sure you press that subscribe button and the notification bell so you'll get notified every time I upload a brand new video. And that's it for this week. And I know that most of you are gearing up for the Halloween big day happening tomorrow. So if you are crunched and still looking for something really quick and easy last minute for Halloween, I have a fantastic webbed shawl that you can make for yourself. And it is very, very popular. And it is in my Halloween crochet playlist, and I'll leave a link to that in the description box down below if you're still looking for some cute, quick, and easy projects for the Halloween season. So make sure to check that out. And then we are gearing up for, you know what, the big holiday season. So lots more fun tutorials coming your way. In the meantime, guys, I hope you have a wonderful day. Happy crocheting as always, and I'll see you guys in next week's session. Bye-bye.